So, welcome everybody officially. Thank you for being here and taking some time out of your Friday. Glad to be spending some time with you guys today. And my goal really is to give you an idea of what's possible for you as a speaker, as an author. If you're already out there speaking, you've gotten a little taste of it. So you know what that's like. You may have some clarity about your messaging, you may not. But I think what we all have in common is a desire for impact. So that's why we're all here today. And I'm going to share my screen, show you my pretty slides. And oh, let me just say this. I mentioned that there's going to be time for question and answer after my little presentation. But if you've got questions as we go ahead and pop in. You can put them in the chat. You can, raise your hand with the little raise your hand icon, or just physically raise your hand. I think I'll be able to see all of you as I do this. So, okay. So welcome, and we're going to talk about how to get you on bigger stages. And by that, I mean, not just physical stages, could be virtual, but everything is a stage. Like Mike was talking about networking, and that's how we met, is in a couple of different networking groups. And that's a stage. Every time that you say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm here to tell you about something, you're on a stage, you're selling yourself, you're selling something, and you're potentially increasing your connections and your impact. And that's what's important to me. So you guys all introduced yourself before we started recording, and I'll just give you a quick update on who I am. I'm Amy Collette. I started the Unleash Your Inner Author program about 8 years ago. And the goal of that is to help people get their message. They're compelled to get their message out there to the world. Lots of times they're speakers already, and it's absolutely necessary for them, part of their purpose, to get their message out to the world to make an impact. And so I want to pause a second on that word, on impact. We throw that word around a lot, and I know I say it a lot. You can call it influence, thought leadership, but what does it really mean? To me, it means empowering people, helping people, giving them a perspective that we've gained through some kind of transformation that they need. So that's what it feels like to me. Does anybody else have a different definition of impact, or something that you'd like to add to that? Okay, awesome. I think that's what we're all here for. So what holds us back from sharing our message? And this might be anywhere from being on social media to being on stage to writing your book, the pages of your book. So the reason I have that cute little dragon on this slide is because I call those barriers that keep us from doing some big project that we really want to do and getting our message out there, being more vulnerable and more visible. I call those things fear dragons, because those fear dragons kind of steal our energy, and they take it and fly around, and we think of them as fire-breathing monsters, right? In the Western culture, we think of dragons as super scary and something that we don't want. But I think of fire dragons as a warning signal. It's like, hey, you've got something going on here you need to look at. If something is holding you back or causing you fear, it's an opportunity to dig in, right? Those barriers are always opportunities to learn something about yourself, to grow in some way, and to hopefully move forward. The biggest thing that I hear from authors of why they haven't written a book yet is, I don't know how to start. It's just as basic as that. And I think of it, I make a lot of analogies with building a house, right? You don't just take a couple of 2x4s and start whacking together and hope they turn into a house someday, right? You've got to have a foundation. You've got to know how to start. Another one is my story worth telling? Is anybody going to care? Is anybody going to read this thing? And so that's just imposter syndrome popping its head up saying, oh, you're not good enough. Who are you to write a book? Who are you to get on stage and share your story? What I hear a lot from speakers in particular is, I would write a book, but I'm not a good writer. I suck at writing. And what I hear a lot is what I call trauma or creative trauma. And this happens, maybe you guys have had this happen when you're a kid or younger person, somebody in authority or somebody that you look up to has told you, oh, honey, you can't make a living as a writer. You can't make a living as an artist or a speaker. And they're trying to protect you, but you've taken the message that I can't do that. I'm not good enough to do that. I hear so many stories like that, even from teachers who say, oh, you'll never be a world-class writer. You're just, you should stick with playing tennis or whatever it is that, that is your special something. And they try to steer you away from something they think might be kind of scary. And number one big thing, I've heard several of you say you're aspiring authors, and this was my story too for a long time. I'll do it someday. I mean, I dreamed of writing a book someday. And it's someday never comes if you don't make a plan for it. That procrastination is something that can bite us when we want to leave a legacy. We want to empower people and help people make a transformation. Why not now? So another thing I hear a lot is it worth it to take the magic that I do on stage as a speaker? And I'm thinking of you, Will, because you're so magnetic and everybody is, we have our certain personality that we show on stage. So how do you bottle that up and put it on the page? I think speakers really struggle with this because they're not sure that they can make that magic happen on the page, but there are ways. And I want to plant this little seed. What if you could speak your book into existence instead of writing it? So then you kind of throw out that story about, oh, I'm a terrible writer. And it puts you in your zone of genius, which is speaking. Because how many of you are verbal processors? You love to talk, you love to speak it out loud, get things out of your head, maybe in conversation or even on the stage. Sometimes people come up with brilliant ideas while they're on the stage speaking. So, or you make some connection that you haven't made before. So many people are like that, whether they're really professional speakers or not, that we've developed a program for that. I'll tell you about that a little bit later. So I'd love to say, because I've seen this happen so much, and I feel myself doing this when I'm watching a speaker who's really engaging. And when you're a speaker, you see it happen from stage. People fall a little bit in love with you when you're on the stage. They're connecting with you from the heart, and they're saying, man, I'd love to know more about Inga. I'd love to take a little bit of her home with me. And your book is that. I mean that in the best possible way. I mean that in the best possible way, because they're really wanting to connect in a deeper way, and to understand your backstory and understand what your motivations were and what your inspiration was to get you to the place you are now, because they want that. They want the transformation that you've already experienced, so your book becomes their treasure. I'm going to talk to you today about 3 different authors who have kind of taken their magic, put it into a book, and made really amazing legacies out of that. They're making a positive impact every time somebody picks up their book and or sees them on stage. And so it's my pleasure to talk about these three awesome authors because I've gotten to help all three of them bring their story to the page. So the first one is Nancy Rhines. She's the one on the left. You probably all know Megan Kelly. You've seen her on TV a million times. But Nancy wrote a book called Awakenings from the Light, and it's about her near-death experience. It's quite different. I just looked on Amazon today. She has over 340 reviews of her book. So a small percentage of people leave reviews, and she's obviously had a lot of people read her book. So her story is really interesting because she was a reticent author. She was a fantastic writer. I worked with her in a professional setting, in a corporate setting, where we were both professional writers and editors, and I knew her work was just excellent. So when she suffered this crazy accident, I hate to even say it because it's so gruesome, but she was run over on her bike by an SUV and almost died from that. So when she was under the knife, when the doctors were putting her broken body back together, she died for a few moments. And she had this incredible experience that felt like to her was maybe weeks or months. It was just probably a couple of minutes in real time on Earth. But she brought back with her life lessons that she wanted to share, that she actually had agreed on the other side to bring back to the world so she could share it with all of us and we could learn from her experience in heaven. She calls it heaven just for lack of a better word, but you can insert whatever word that works for you. So she came back and wrote her book, and her fear dragon that she really was struggling with was she was a scientist. She was a data analyst. She was she was pretty much atheistic. She didn't believe in a higher power, that kind of thing. So she came back a very changed person and had this spiritual awakening. And so she was afraid that nobody in the scientific world would ever take her seriously again, would ever think that she was not just kind of crazy after this experience. And so that she was very reticent about writing her story and getting it out there in a bigger way. But she did. She was really motivated to write this story, and she asked me to help her, and it was my honor to help her bring this beautiful story to the world. So she, since then, has made a really powerful impact. She wanted to release the book. She said, I did it. I fulfilled my mission. I wrote the book, and now I'm just going to leave it at that. She wasn't going to market it or anything, but word got out and she started being asked to speak. And so she started getting on bigger and bigger stages. And there is a whole subculture of near-death experience conferences and meetings and podcasts and all that. And she became the darling of that world and still is. There's been a documentary film made about her based on her book. And she was featured in the Netflix series Surviving Death. And as you saw from this slide, she texted me one night and said, I can't tell you what's going on, but keep your eye out for any texts from me and pay attention. So I was like, okay, mystery lady, what's going on? So the next morning, very, very early, she said, I'm going to be on the Today Show today. They flew me out to New York and I'm going to be the guest on the show. So I was able to actually tune in while it was being broadcast live. And the first thing they opened, and there was an 8-foot, one of those huge trade show banners that are like 8 feet tall, 6 feet tall, with the book cover on there. I about cried because it was so beautiful to see her book cover on national TV. And so I asked her later, I said, how the heck did you get on the Today Show? And she said, they called me out of the blue. They wanted someone who was a speaker and had a book, was an author. And they saw that I had some credibility after speaking on all these different stages and having a successful book. So they called and flew me out to New York, and here I am. So that was pretty amazing. So it is possible to get some media exposure. And This is just a little pro tip that I can give you from PR and media expert that I know personally. She's out of New York. She helps a lot of people get on shows just like this. And I asked her, I said, does it help your people to be authors? And she said, absolutely. She says, actually, it's a requirement. It's very difficult for me to get people on TV if they don't have a book, just because it lends them that credibility of actually having done the work and being an expert in whatever they're talking about. It gives them that credibility and gives the show the credibility of having authors and experts on their show. So that was a very eye-opening conversation for me. And so the real impact is, how has it changed lives, right? So Nancy's people say that it has really helped them come to a sense of peace about death, about losing others, and even about their own death. And so you can go and look up her reviews online, but I read a couple this morning, said it's a profound message about how we can live now to bring heaven to earth. And another one was that this book is a shining light of wisdom in a dark time. I thought that was pretty awesome to have that kind of an impact. So my second author I'm featuring today is the fabulous Sarah Hart. And Sarah has written 2 books with me. She came to me the first time. She was already a very experienced speaker because she was a workshop leader, facilitator, and had been for about 20 years. But she was talking about somebody else's system, not her own, right? So she came to me to write The Upside of Downsizing. And this book is really an interesting journey. It's very different from the other kind of can I say the word? Minimalist books out there and downsizing like Marie Kondo, because those books tell you exactly how to do the things, how to fold your t-shirts and how to pack all these things, and how to make these decisions. Sarah's book is more about the emotional journey. How do you take good care of yourself while you're going through this difficult time of having to make all these decisions? And so for Sarah's example, she was moving from a big house into like a retirement community. So she had a 1-bedroom condo she was moving into. So she said, I have an entire house full of things that spark joy. That's Marie Kondo's thing. Only keep those things that spark joy. She says, what do I do now? So this is really the story of how you take care of yourself, how you make those decisions and really thrive through this time of transition. So since then, Sarah has become a very popular speaker. And her book was put out in 2018. That feels like a long time ago now. But it is still, month over month, it is still a big seller because she's out there speaking. And she's getting a lot of books out there in a bulk way too. And I'll tell you a little bit about that. So she discovered several different types of audiences besides just the obvious ones of people who are moving and in that situation. She started speaking to realtor groups because realtors tend to go in and say, oh, you got to get rid of all this old stuff, and we're going to come in and stage it with beautiful new things. And it's really breaking the person's heart because they're thinking, well, it might be junky stuff to you, but it's my life, So she trains realtors on how to be more empathetic and really serve their audiences better with being able to be a little kinder and more diplomatic about their approach. She's also created relationships. And this is another kind of pro tip for you speakers who are also authors or want to be. The greatest thing you can do as a speaker is make it part of your contract to sell X amount of books, so that they have to buy a certain number of books as part of the agreement for you to come speak, right? So Sarah has done this brilliantly with national companies that run retirement communities. And so they give their books, her books, as an incentive you know, when they come to look at the place, they say, oh, well, here's a support, a resource for you as you downsize. This is wonderful. And we bring Sarah in every once in a while to talk, to give her expert view on how to do this in a way that is doable and feels like you've got support. So that's a really brilliant thing. So I help her with this, and we just drop ship books to wherever she's going to be speaking live, or if she's going to be visiting them virtually, we just send the books directly to the facility, and then they deal with them from there. But it's a really beautiful way to sell a lot of books and get on more stages. And what we found is even when she's selling books like this, which are not, you know, you don't see those numbers on Amazon, on your Amazon sales. That's kind of behind the scenes, right? But it sparks the Amazon sales because people have the book, they're you know, recommending it to others, and it just keeps those sales going on and on. So it's a beautiful way to really increase your impact that way, increase your visibility. So you know, her heart to heart impact is that people reach out to her on email all the time and say, Sarah, I want to hug you. I feel like you were sitting on the couch with me, holding my hand. And one of her reviews online says, it felt like I had a shoulder to cry on. So my next speaker is Barry Overton. He's a Denver guy. Will, I think you know him. Do you know Barry? Yeah. And so he has the most beautiful speaking voice. I was very excited when I met him because I said, oh, I can't wait for your audiobook. So he's got paperback, hardback, ebook, and audiobook. And so does Sarah. We've got, and I think all of three of them have their audiobooks out if you prefer to listen to your books that way. But Barry came to me with a couple of book ideas, and I see this a lot, where he said, oh, I have the book I should write first. And I said, oh, what's your other book? And so he described this book about greatness. And I asked this of all my authors. So if you've got a couple of book ideas, I'm going to ask you this too. Which book is tugging at your heart the most? And he said, oh, it's the greatness. It's my legacy. I have to write that book. And I said, well, you know, writing a book the first time is a whole new experience. And it takes a lot of time and devotion and money, and do the one that is going to keep you motivated and keep you excited. And so he wrote this book about greatness. And he had this crazy dream. On our first meeting, he said, I want Les Brown to be involved in my book launch. I want him to write a testimonial, or maybe the foreword, or, you know, even better, like have me on his podcast to help me launch my book. And I said, wow. Does everybody know who Les Brown is? Very famous motivational speaker, right? Huge. He's been around for like 40 years. He's amazing. He's still got so much energy. It just almost exhausts me to watch him, but he has little nuggets of gold with every talk that he gives. So he has a very popular podcast, and he started doing it, I think it was daily or at least during the week, during the pandemic. He started doing his podcast daily just to uplift people. And so I asked Barry, how do you know Mr. Brown? And he said, oh, I don't know Les Brown. I said, oh, okay, great. Who in your network knows Les or has some kind of, you know, connection to his publicist or something? He says, you know, I've already reached out. I've already tried that. I got nothing. And I said, okay, how are you going to get this to happen? He says, I'm going to make it happen. And you can see that he did. This was an interview to launch Barry's book, and he was on Les Brown's podcast. Les Brown was on his podcast, and Barry even ended up being an emcee for some of Les Brown's summits and events. So he's also been trained as a speaker. through Les Brown, and it's just launched his career. So he never would have had this happen if he hadn't written the book. This was his in for all of these things, because he was not, even though he's got this beautiful voice, he was not a professional speaker before he wrote his book. And so now he's been on many tours with another gentleman named Billy Alsbrooks. Anybody familiar with Billy Alsbrooks? He's another big motivational speaker. You can find him on YouTube, as you can everything. And Barry, part of Barry's impact is he's really involved with youth organizations and with organizations that support police officers. He's a former police officer himself. And so he loves to give back, and the book is another way for him to give back. He gets to speak about this and motivate and inspire audiences to embrace their own greatness. So it's very inspirational, and I encourage you all to go find Barry on YouTube and listen to him speak. He's not like one of those guys that yells all the time. His message is powerful but gentle, and so it comes across very much where it kind of hits you in the heart, and that's exactly what he wants to happen with his talks and with his book. So I hope I've inspired you to think about what's possible for you as a speaker as well as an author. And I love to talk about this. I can talk about, telling stories and making an impact all day long, because that's my jam. That's what I'm here for on this earth. So I encourage you, if you just want to talk about, ask your questions. Of course, we have time today to ask some questions too, and talk about what's on your mind about, what's holding you back from writing your book or getting your message out there. But I'm also happy to have a casual conversation with you about it. So you can book that at unleashyourinnerauthor.com/call. And I think, Laura, can you put that in the chat? And I'm going to stop my share now. And look at all your beautiful faces. So, all right. I'd love to know what's on your mind now. Questions, comments, inspirations?
If I may, I've been, in this journey, speaking, they say you have to have a book. My biggest turnoff, in fact, I just did a video about this today. It's on my LinkedIn, check it out, about how people are using AI and ghostwriters to put out just a piece of merch. You might as well sell keychains and bumper stickers. I want my book to come from the heart. There are a lot of people telling me that it's a shiny object. There's one more thing you're looking to do to get away from. I've got to focus on getting clients for coaching, and the writing is, I know I'm going to condense all my blog posts into the book. That's what I'm looking for. Sure. I have some long-term projects that have some long-term ideas that have nothing to do with my business. And my idea, it is procrastinating, but I want to get what I do, a book that reflects my business, number one. But then I have I have an idea for a novel, and I have an idea for a historical novel. And these are long-term projects I want to get used to, writing books, publishing, getting feedback, and that'll be the thing years from now.
Right. Well, Mike, I'm really glad that you brought this up. The book, just to have a book and kind of mark it off the list, like, oops, speaker, author, just as a checklist kind of thing. That will really get me up on my soapbox.
Let's do it.
The idea there is that nobody's going to read the book anyway. So just have it as, basically a fancy business card, right? That's the concept. And sure, you can use your book as a business card. Absolutely. I love to give new clients a copy of my book. That's awesome. But you want to provide value with anything you do. You want to provide absolute value. And if you're going to take the time and energy to do a book, it's got to be real. It's got to be authentic. Otherwise, you're going to chase away the people you most want to connect with, right? Because writing an authentic book that's really about your passion and your mission, that's making a direct heart-to-heart connection with your reader, which is exactly what you want from stage And from those people, I like to say that you're crossing time and space when you have a book, because people can read it, even after you're gone, or they can read it across the world from you and connect with you and make that transformation for themselves, whether they ever actually reach out to you or not. It can make an impact on people. So obviously, I'm not a fan of writing a book with AI, because nobody can really tell your story. Yes, you can feed all that stuff into AI and it can spit it back out, but why not tell it yourself? And so this is where the Speak It Into Existence program comes into play too. And I think, Will and I are working on this together. And that's how Barry wrote his book. He was actually the first one. He said, I really have a hard time writing, and it's just finding the time for it. And I get all in my perfectionism mode. Like, some people will write a sentence and then edit it 3 times before they write the next sentence. Well, you don't get very far, and then you forget what you were going to say. There's no flow involved like there is when you're speaking. So Barry would come into our sessions, and we had his outline all figured out. And then he would say, okay, in this chapter, I want to talk about this. I want to do this. I said, okay, what stories are you going to tell? What examples are you going to give? How are you going to connect with people through story? And so he would tell a couple of stories. And so we recorded all that, transcribed it, and that became the content for his book. And that's how so many people who are verbal processors, and speakers in particular, have it. That's actually a much better use of time. And I'll give you another pro tip. I'm big on pro tips today. A lot of companies will call this ghostwriting. It's basically you're doing all the work and they're transcribing it and editing it and calling it ghostwriting. That's kind of what ghostwriting is these days. So if people think they don't have enough time, they want a ghostwriter, that's what they're doing. I don't call it ghostwriting, because it's really you. It's your writing. It's your creation. And sure, we're going to get editors involved in anything, even Shakespeare needed an editor, right? So, okay, that's probably enough for my soapbox, but there's different ways to do it, that you don't have to use AI to, sound like a robot to tell your message, or to just have it out there to check a box.
I appreciate that. I agree you need an editor to reel everything in, because what makes perfect sense to me is not, well, I like it. I'm going to give myself a testimonial. It's my favorite book. But I will say having a good editor is important. I just think of all these celebrity memoirs that they didn't even,
Right,
so much of it was done on their behalf. So there is a fine line there. But I've
right.
just seen the operations, especially in the speaking world. It's unbelievable. They just want a prop behind them. So I really appreciate that that's your focus, and it's really about connecting to people. Do you really
Yeah.
go with, I'm thinking in the speaking world, do people want a how-to for the speaking, or is it more about my speaking journey? What would be a better?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know, Mike. Let's have an offline conversation about that.
Yeah, let's do it. I got
Yeah, let's do that.
you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Cool.
Will, you have a question, comment?
I do. Thank you. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for sharing today, because it has me motivated a little bit more. And I promise you, I'm going to put 5 hours a week into this. I put it down on my calendar. It'll be scheduled.
Okay, I'm going to be checking on you.
Yeah, please do. So I'm really excited about that. And I just want to kind of talk about what Mike was just talking about, because I've heard that same thing. I was just at an event last week, not this past week, but the week before, in Dallas, and there was a woman there that put out a bunch of books, and she literally has a class on how to use AI to write a book. And I was like, you know what? That's not me. That's not authentic to me, right? My story is my story, and kind of tagging on to what Mike was just asking about, a workbook or a checklist. And Amy knows my story, and really my story, I've been able to create a program that literally can help people change their lives. And so I'm excited about that, because when I talk about it and when I share it, it literally comes from within inside. I mean, there is no other way. Amy has sat with me and we went through this, and she's seen it come out. And the thing for me that was really helpful. And I just want to share this, Amy, because it was helpful for me when it came to having this kind of aha moment with writing. Because she had mentioned about the school teacher. I had one of those. I was literally accused of plagiarism because I was not a good writer. And it just stuck with me for a really, really long time. But you said to me one time when we were talking, and it just hit me. I'm like, I am literally speaking my book to someone sitting across the table from me. And that's how I'm approaching my book, is I am sharing all these things and this passion and my life, how, and it's a life change. I mean, it wasn't, well, I did have a near death experience, but we'll go in there, but that's not what's doing it. And not the main thrust of the book, but just to have that vision of me being there. And even when I start recording it, that's what it's going to be. It's going to be me standing in front of a group going through my book. And so that was really, really helpful. So thank you for the reminders and maybe the kick in the butt to get moving on this.
A little nudge. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Will, for sharing that, because yeah, I had an author one time tell me he was also speaking his book into existence. And he said, it really helps to have a sympathetic ear, you know, to hear you talk. And that's, some people will talk about the stuff that they want to put in the book and then record it later. But just to know that you've got, you know, that's part of the book writing process, at least in my program, where we really create your ideal reader, or what I call your soulmate reader, so that you have that in your mind all the time. So when you're writing or speaking, you're speaking to that person who most needs to hear your message, right? That's who we want to impact. That's who we want to empower or help make a transformation. So when we've got that person super clear in our mind, yeah, they become like your companion as you're writing. So you're never alone, and and you are writing in a way that is actually going to touch the person in the way that you want to make an impact, that you want to serve them. Okay, Inga, you're next.
Yeah. Thank you, by the way, for putting this together today. A question came to my mind as you were telling us the story about I'm sorry, I forgot the name, but the person that was using, or they created a kind of a clause in their contract for where they're going to have a speaking engagement.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, to guarantee a certain number of book purchases. If you're, say you already have the opportunity to be speaking, whether it's on a podcast or somebody invites you. And I think there was, I'm not sure if it was the same person, but there was another case where you mentioned where someone suggested that, yeah, it's almost a must-have to have a book to kind of further your credibility. But if you haven't, maybe you're still writing your book, but you are fortunate enough to have opportunities to speak.
Yes.
Is it a good idea to mention that you're writing a book yet? Or should you hold off and wait till the book is at least sort of done before you start going on these speaking engagements? I'm just wondering what, in your experience or what others' experience, has been more effective or effective at all.
Yeah. Terrific question. And I might ask Laura to tag in on this one because she's a marketing person. But I actually start talking about marketing in the very first part of the coaching program, because I think you should start putting it in your signature, your email signature. You should start talking about it. I mean, I don't want to say should, it's up to you. Everybody's different, but it's never too early really to start the marketing. So I think definitely it is another sort of feather in your cap that you're the author of the upcoming book title, right? So that it shows that you're working on this, it's in the works, and you are it just gives you that credibility piece that a book really does. You know, I really I have to just tell you a little story about this, personal story. So I'd always heard that, you know, you sort of rise in the eyes of some people when you are an author, right? But until you actually experience it, You can't really know that it's true. But I remember I was talking to somebody, it was at some conference or networking thing in person, this was before COVID, and mentioned that I was an author. And she stepped back and said, "Oh, you're an author?" And looked at me like I was a rock star, you know? It was very weird, but very cool. You know, it was a funny entry, but that's the kind of thing that author gets you, you know? And so I believe, I'm a strong believer in saying, even helping people go through the process with you. Like, yeah, I've made the decision. I'm going to write the book, you know, sort of putting it out there, a little accountability, but also, you know, just putting it out there in the universe. And then people will ask you about it. And then you can say, oh yeah, I'm, you know, got chapter 1 done, really excited. Or, oh man, I'm really struggling with chapter 3. And then all the way through to where you're in the design phase, and you know, you've seen people on Facebook or LinkedIn say, hey, do you like cover number 1, 2, or 3? You know, just, and it's really more about getting some buzz than because you've got to take people's feedback in, you know, under advisement, as I would say, as lawyers say, right? We'll take that under advisement. Because really it's up, you know, it's up to you as the author. But it's fun to get people involved in the process, and then they see it coming to life as you go. So Laura, or anybody else? Laura,
I just want to add that, and you did mention it, that really, I think the accountability piece, just for you personally, like to, you know, if I say I'm writing a book, it's like, it's just a reminder to me, like, okay, you said you were going to do this. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, does that help, Inga?
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Okay, good.
What was the language you said that works for that? Because you don't want to put, I'm writing my book. I mean, like in your signature.
Author of
or
the
that kind of thing?
upcoming book, and then the
Upcoming.
title, or forthcoming. I think it's upcoming, forthcoming book. Yeah, that's in your course materials.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
You can look it up. It's in one of the first modules. Yeah, because I say, is it too soon to start thinking about marketing? The answer is no. So glad you're thinking about that, Inga. Anybody else want to chime in on that concept? Okay. Other questions, comments, ideas?
I have your calendar open, so I'm gonna, actually, I'll type in all those long answers later. It says, tell me about you. That's gonna take a while, so I don't want to open. It's open though.
I'll leave it
done.
open-ended so you can decide what to say. Some people just put a link to their website. It's
Okay,
funny.
make it
Tells me
easy.
a lot
Always
about
make
you,
it-
what you choose to say about yourself or not. So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So how are you feeling about making your impact now? Anything change for you?
It's really cool that you have a real humanistic approach to books. You know, not long ago, I was connected to somebody who has a scam where they sell a chapter in their own book and then nobody reads it. They put it on Amazon. You pay $2,000 to put a chapter in somebody's book. They put it on Amazon, put it in a category that nobody else is in. Buy one copy of the book for $1. You can call yourself a best-selling author and nobody ever reads the book. And I see so many things like that. And it's good to see that there are real people who have real passion for books who do that. So it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, those collaborative books have gotten a bad, this is another one of my soapbox moments, but I'll be brief. Those anthologies can actually be done really well and in a professional and authentic way. But many of them aren't. And so it gives the good ones a bad rap, you know, but just like anything, it can be done poorly and it can be done well. Like just for AI, if it's a book that's informational, educational, it's just about knowledge stuff, great, do it with AI. You know, get some help with that. But if it's a personal story, I mean, it's yeah, I'm very big on it needing to come from the heart. Yeah. Okay, well, let's do a little closing round of what you how you're feeling, what you got from today. Just quickly, it can be 1 or 2 words or a phrase. So, Will, you want to start us off?
Sure. So I would say motivated. You know, I know Barry, and I met Barry right when he was working with you and finishing up his book. And to see the results that he's had was really motivating. A little demotivating though too, if I'm being honest, because I'm like, oh my gosh, and just you know, it's my internal self-talk that is, you
Yeah.
suck. Why aren't you doing this? How come it's taking you so long? And you know my story. I've had a few things going on, so I have to give myself grace. So, but I'm really motivated, and there's huge value in it. And my story, I think, will touch, and impact is huge. I mean, it will have a big impact. And I need to get off my butt and let all that other stuff go away. And
Thanks for sharing that, Will.
yeah.
All right, Mike.
Well, it give me some clarity on what kind of a book to write. I have a few far-fetched ideas about historical novels and things that have happened, but that's not connected to the business. Yet in the speaking world, you see a lot of books of how to speak or how to fight stage fright. And you can't put a real human story that inspires people and teaches people in story form. We do that as speakers. We can do that as writers too.
Great point. Yeah, thanks for that. Carrie, would you like to jump in?
Yeah, I actually would. What I got from this is exposure, because I'm coming out of a science world where I was just a scientist and working in corporations into a whole new field, and it's like it's just it's wonderful and it's exhausting and it's completely new all at the same time. So I'm inspired by just hearing all of you who are already out there doing your thing. It's really inspiring for me. And I know I'm going to write this book because I spent 4 hours this morning writing it. Even though I told Amy, I'm going to put that on hold, I can't stop. And so this does help for me also because I want to write the passion project. And I also wanted to help people. I wanted to have real value, not just something so I can call myself an author, even though I want that too. So this is helpful for me just to kind of gel all those thoughts together. So I appreciate it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you for sharing.
Mhm.
Yeah, Inga.
Well, as you know, I'm kind of in the process of sort of speaking my book as well, too, 15 minutes a day. So it kind of gave me, I guess, maybe a little more encouragement as far as, those opportunities where I am getting a chance to speak a little bit more about what I do and what I do for my clients, to actually throw in there that I am doing this. It's not something I have to wait till it's done before I can start talking about. So that's good to know.
Great point. Thanks for sharing that. All right, Laura.
A couple of things. One is I just love seeing Sarah Hart and Nancy Rhymes and Barry. I get inspired every time I see them and hear more about their story. And I also wanted to say something about what Mike brought up about the the sort of despicable aspects of of anything really in the world, and how you just kind of have to make that choice of looking for value. And this company or this person, what are their values? Are they transparent about what their real values are? And do I want to do business with them based on those values? Do they match mine? So anyway, I think a lot about that just as a marketer. And yeah, and just that, it's like an ongoing process to really let go of when you come across those things and just keep moving towards the heartfelt. So
Yeah, thank you. I think that's a good summation. It's what's really fun for me is to see how everybody took something slightly different away from our conversation today. So thank you all for participating and And I loved our little intimate group today because we can really chew on some of these topics and dive a little deeper. And that's always my happy place. So I feel a very sense of connection, and I'm inspired by you all. Everyone has an amazing story to tell, and a wonderful adventure of their life, even if there are some hard times. But those stories can impact and transform other people and help lift them up. So thank you for wanting to do that. And thank you for being here today. I wish you a wonderful rest of your Friday, wherever you are, and a wonderful weekend. So I'll see you soon.
All right.
Doing
Thank
me.
you.
Book a
Buddy.
call with me if we haven't talked yet.